Hello everybody, I hope you're going well. Today I will show you how to beat high-rated opponents, and to make it as clear as possible, I will show you the game Magnus Carlsen, the last game of their match for the World Chess Championship title in 2018. And of course, Carlsen started the game with e4, c5, and knight f3, going for the classical Sicilian defense, e6, and now he's not going for the classical, he goes c4. The idea is just to control the d5 square billions of times. Knight c6, and now d4. Trade, and now we have the Marokshi bind. And the idea of the Marokshi bind is just to control the d5 square quite a lot. Bishop c5 attacking the knight. Taking doesn't make any sense. We can just take back. More pawns in the center, bishop h6. Nah, that's not good. So knight c2. The idea is just to not getting attacked by the bishop anymore. Knight f6, attacking the pawn, knight c3 defense. Bishop b4 not possible because we can just take it, for those of you who ask. And now castles. Bishop e3. Why? Because this bishop is pretty annoying and we want to trade it off. Taking, knight takes, and the position is alright for white. Everything is perfectly protected. Bishop d3, castles, it's a good game. f4, f5, typical attack. But b6 will be played. And now bishop e2. I'm okay. Since this bishop is there to control this diagonal, this bishop isn't that strong anymore. So we are ready to castle. Bishop b7, and now castle. Easy peasy. Queen e7, the idea is to play rook d8 and d5 at some point, but queen d2. We do not care because we're controlling the d5 square quite a lot. Rook fd8, rook fd1, we're controlling the d5 square even more, and now knight e5. Knight e5 is a very interesting move. The idea is just to attack the pawns, but the problem is that this move isn't that good for a good reason. There is a move which gives white a clear advantage immediately, and that is bishop c5 takes and f4. The question is, what does it have to do with beating high-rated opponents? What it has to do is that no matter what is the rating of your opponent, if you're rated 1900 or 1800, someone rated 1700 is already pretty good rated, even compared to you, which means that he's potentially as good as you. That is why you have to take some risk to win. Now he's playing f4, he's weakening his king, but in return, he's taking a lot of space and he's ready to attack. Knight g6, the pawn on e4 is getting attacked. Bishop f3 doesn't make any sense, since the bishop might go there for an attack. So queen e3. We are opening up the line for the rook, pointing at the c5 pawn, and if it is really needed, we will go bishop f3. d6, trying to solidify c5, rook d2, a6, bad move. Probably bishop a6 was better, rook c8, or rook d7 for playing rook d8, but a6 doesn't make any sense. Of course, it is stopping knight b5, but there is other problems to solve. a6, rook d1, and queen c7. Queen c7, the idea is to, at some point, give yourself some chances with the knight, and eventually jumping on the other side of the board with the queen. So, b3, we are not allowing the queen to do anything there. h6, a prophylaxis move, but notice that now, there is quite a pretty annoying connection between the queen and the knight on the f4 square. So g3, we're stopping the potential threat that was created by the move queen c7. Rook d7. By the way, let's say instead of h6, black wanted to go d5 first. e5 is playable, f5 is playable. We should just have to be careful about d4 in between moves, so that is why you should probably take first, and then go for knight takes, pawn takes, and even though you can play knight takes, there's bishop f3, we are defending the pawn, and we have just a free passer for no reason. If we go d6 first, there is knight e2 check, so we are not winning anything, but okay, it's still a good position. But okay, let's go back. So h6 first, and now g3, making sure that nothing will never happen on the f4 pawn. Rook d7, bishop f3, putting the bishop on the nice diagonal, rook e8, not rook d8, because the rook on d7 is already protecting everything, so rook e8. The queen is pretty strong, so queen f2 we get out of the way. The idea is also to prepare at some point e5, and this diagonal will be open, or if black goes d5 and we take with the e-pawn, it is important that this diagonal won't be open directly, with a free tempo. So, knight e7. If white wants at some point to go for e5, the f5 square might be a little bit weak. So h3, taking some time, trying to improve the position of the king. Rook e d8, black doesn't know what to do, and white just goes for bishop g2. Notice that it seems like it is nothing, but now we want knight e1, knight f3. So knight c6, and now g4. The idea is just to take even more space, we're taking even more risks. By the way, knight c6 is stopping the idea of knight e5, knight there, because if we go knight e5, there might be some knight e4 moves which are very, very difficult to handle. So g4. Knight e4 now it's ridiculous. So queen a5, trying to lure this knight away, win some tempo. So it is normal. But knight a4, because the queen was also pointing at the a2 pawn, knight a4 is just stopping that idea. And at the same time, if you want to go d5 right now, the c5 pawn might be pretty weak. So queen c7, okay, if knight c3, queen a4, I guess. I'm sorry, queen a5, I guess. So e5. If pawn takes, this is exactly what happened. We want to take the c5 pawn. It is difficult to do something else. If knight e8, we can just take, and that's it. We just want a pawn, that's the game, but in worse. So d takes e5, and now knight takes c5. The e5 pawn is pretty weak, but the black pawn might be in time to capture on f4. This is something that we will probably see. Rook d2, rook d2, rook d2, queen d2. And now, if you want to take, for example, on f4, there is a small problem. There is an intermezzo. Boom, knight takes b7, boom, queen takes b7, and queen f4. And if we look at the pieces that are still on the board, we have 3 pawns on the queen side against 1. We have a bishop against the knight. We have a passed c-pawn, which is giving white a huge advantage because the pawn can potentially promote. And this 4 against 2 on the king side will not do anything because the king is already there to defend. So after queen d2, bishop a8 was played, but now we can just capture back on e5, queen e5, and notice that after knight d7, and for example, I don't want to continue, I just want to show you that position. That position is already better for white because of the passed c-pawn. That is very, very unfortunate, but it's not the end of it. Knight d7, we can just take back and notice that there are quite a lot of troubles and problems to deal with, and there is no check. That is also pretty interesting. Yeah, there's eventually queen c5, but king h1, and that's it. So the queen b2 was played. Okay, now Magnus Carlsen wanted to attack the king, and the queen is a little bit too far away, so Magnus decided to go queen d6. The idea of queen d6 is just to go for some checkmate threats, and eventually capture the bishop. If you take there, I might be able, I wouldn't be surprised by the way, if I could just take, and be a little bit better in the end game. I will try to march my king forward to b6 and push the pawn forward. I wouldn't be surprised. So knight e7 and knight takes e7, and now queen takes c2. But okay, queen e8, king h7, and queen takes a8. It is exactly what we wanted, but actually we didn't take the knight on c6, which means that the white king might actually be safe behind the bishop. Queen d1 and king h2 and queen d6. Probably that queen c1 was a little bit better because after king h2 there is still, queen f4 check, and that might be a draw. Of course, the king can also run towards the center, and at some point hide. It is just important to not go, for example, king f3 and get almost mated like that. That would be a problem. That's even worse than that. You're getting mated and you're losing the queen. So queen d1, king h2, queen d6, king h1, and now that is certainly a good move. But Caruana already lost 2 games in rapid, so that game is very important. He has to win. Otherwise, it's going to be tough to actually, get a world champion title. It's actually funny because not only was Caruana rated as high as Magnus Carlsen, but also he had to win, and that is normal when you face, for example, a higher rated opponent, that your higher rated opponent tries to win at all costs. At so many costs that he might actually lose the game. So he didn't go for queen d1 check, he went for knight d4, trying to attack. But now there is a problem, because the queen that was on a8 is coming back into the game, and now the queen will be able to protect the king, and we will eventually march the pawns forwards, something like that. f5, super aggressive move. The idea is that if you Actually, the idea is that I just want to stop the check, and potentially I will get a knight on f5 and I will be able to attack you. But Caruana wanted that, but he probably thought that after pawn takes, knight takes, white can go for queen b1 followed by bishop e4, trying to trade off the pieces. That is not so clear. Yeah, that is not a clear position at all. But okay, he took with the pawn. Probably he was scared of some pins, so he decided to go queen e3 with the white pieces. Queen d5 is also possible, but it is more or less a draw right now. Probably white is still better because of the bishop against the knight, the bad pawn structure, and the passer on the c file. But you know, during a chess game, it's difficult to be sure if something is winning, even though it might be winning. So queen e3, knight e6, and b4, trying to march forward. If queen b4, I can just take your knight. So knight g5 in order to continue the attack, but now c5, and notice that I will just create a passed pawn. And that is something you have to keep in mind. If you want to win against higher red opponents, you cannot go for easy one move tactics. You have to, and I would also recommend you to do that, but you have to, you have to outplay them also strategically speaking. And having a pass pawn is the best way to outplay them strategically. Queen f6, and now c6. The bishop is doing a great job defending the king and attacking, and I'm sorry, defending the king and attacking on the queen side and defending the c6 pawn. Knight e6, and now a4, preparing b5, and there is nothing that black can do about that. Knight c7, and now queen f4, preparing at some point some bishop e4 to play on the pin. For example, if you go, for example, g6, I can do something like that. But I'm also attacking the knight, of course, so knight e6, and now queen d6. I am pinning the knight. Queen a1, king h2, there is no more check. Magnus is perfectly understanding how to defend his king. Taking there doesn't make any sense, we lose the knight. So knight d4, but now c7, and the pawn will just promote. Queen c3, but that's just a desperate attempt. Queen c5, if you trade off the queens, there is no way to stop the pawn. So queen e3, trying to try something, that's normal. c8 queen, and if you go queen f4, I will be able to run away because actually I can just go on h1 and there is no more checks. Queen c1, I can just take it, and there is just no more checks. I don't know why I played king g1, probably a misclick. But notice that the position is just over after c8 queen, f4 to try, for example, if you play a bad move, that will be a perpetual check, and that is easy. But after f4, queen g4, there is no more queen g3, Fabiano Caruana resigns. And that is how you beat a 2800 rated player. You have to put him under pressure, create some passers, and okay, creating some passes, what I mean is, of course, to outplay your opponent strategically speaking. To be good at strategy, you can, of course, either hire a chess coach or continue looking at all the videos of this YouTube channel, since I am analyzing a lot of chess games from world champions and world-class grandmasters. So hopefully you are enjoying all these analyses. If you want anything more, for example, if you want a video on a special theme, just write it down in the comment section. I'll be there in order to answer you. Like always, share the video, subscribe, and see you in the future. Take care.